Hey, what is up, Patreon peeps? It's Rich with the top secret video. It is dark in here today. Like I said, I can't, if I open the curtains, it's gonna blast me with light. It'll be too much. But anyway, I wanted to say thank you to all of you. I'm telling you, you guys really are inspiring me. And I'm not just saying that. You know, the thing is I'm actually, today is my 300th YouTube video. I actually have 300 and I think 3 up, but 3 were tests that I had done over the last couple of years where it was like for whatever reason, I'd have to go back and watch them. There's like a Journey of 1,000 Miles that for some reason, I think I shot it and there was something wrong with it and I didn't have editing tools at the time. So I had uploaded it, whatever, random stuff. But anyway, yeah, 300 YouTube videos. But, yeah, so the thing with Patreon and why it's so important to me is I make okay money doing comics. Honestly, I've had years where it's been really good, and then a normal year for me is not a good year, to be 100% honest. Like, if I just work and do regular work, we'll say B-level DC Comics work, where the original art isn't really, like, from a known penciler, but they could be a good penciler. So, I'm saying it's not John Romita Jr. or David Finch or Jim Lee, okay? Once you get out of that stratosphere, it can drop pretty significantly. Ed Benes stuff does okay, but yeah, I mean, those are very, very difficult years, and essentially what I end up doing is I'm actually slowly going backwards. So things like Patreon, the idea of maybe ultimately doing a Kickstarter, all that stuff is very appealing to me. Kickstarter scares me only because the fantasy is, you know, like, oh, I'll make 30 grand, or I'll make 40 grand, or I'll make 5 grand, or 15 grand, whatever it is. But ultimately, you're going to need to ship, you know, several hundred products. And I know that there's probably third parties that can handle that stuff, but I can't even imagine trying to ship like 250 hardcover books all over the world and then, you know, doing all the correspondence. It's very intimidating. But, you know, if ultimately down the road I could hire an assistant like J. Scott Campbell's got, his brother works for him, and he's got like 3 or 4 people that sort of like help his business stay on track. That would be great. But anyway, but yeah, so Patreon really helps because it's a little tiny bit of extra money that comes in that will help me make the YouTube channel better. Now, if I can actually start making some money on YouTube, then that would be really, really cool. I'll be honest. I mean, my channel does okay. I really think that there's a ton of room to grow on it. But you really, I mean, you really need to have ridiculous amounts of views to make any kind of significant money on YouTube. I think a lot of people, what you're going to find is because Jim Lee's been so active on Twitch, you're going to see tons of comic book artists. I kind of avoid saying this on YouTube because I don't want it to seem like I'm sort of like firing bullets at other comic book artists, but a lot of people will jump on the bandwagon, so to speak. But it's like, are they going to be here in 4 months? Are they going to be here in 6 months? Once they see that it's actually hard work, it's a real commitment, and you know, something that you need to stick to, a lot of them are going to bail. It's easier to just fire something off on Instagram that takes you 3 seconds and you take a shot of whatever you're working on, and you know, you get all the applause, and then you can run with it. But yeah, coming to YouTube, you really need to understand YouTube, I feel, which is why I went to YouTube and built my following on YouTube. I didn't try to bring over Facebook friends real heavily, or Instagram friends, and I think that I made the right call. The reason that I think that I made the right call is I see people that are on Instagram that have I have like 5,000 followers on Instagram, which is very, very small, but I've seen people with, you know, like 100,000 followers on Instagram go like, hey, I'm doing YouTube videos, and like 20 people come over. To me, that shows that there's a huge gap between what people are looking for that go on Instagram and what people that really enjoy YouTube, and YouTube is a part of their life, like Netflix is a part of someone's life, or going to the movies is a part of someone's life, or collecting you know, variant covers. It's a lifestyle. I love the lifestyle of YouTube. I love the lifestyle of being a comic book artist. I love the lifestyle of sharing information. And in one of my old videos, I had talked about this, and this is something that I've always held true once I sort of coined a term for it. comic book artists and being a professional comic book artist in some ways can seem like an exclusive group. You'll even see it as a pro, the sort of pecking order of things. And a good example would be like if someone doesn't know who I am and I meet them at a con, they're just going to treat me like they would treat probably anyone, which is fine. I don't really expect any sort of special treatment. But the moment they find out who you are, then they treat you differently. Okay, I'm the exact opposite of that. I'm inclusive, meaning everybody's invited to the party as far as I'm concerned. I'll treat a person that is just coming to my table that maybe has been drawing for a couple of days the exact same as I would treat, you know, Mark Silvestri or anyone else. I mean, obviously you're going to be respectful to people that have a huge legacy behind them, but some of these people aren't like that. Okay, you're going to meet them and they're not going to really want to give you the time of day, or they'll be like, you know, here's your autograph, hit the road. You know, and for me, I think it kind of came a little bit from my band days. So, you know, I was just like a regular kid, got into music, started playing in bands. You know, I think part of my personality, my successes that I've had is based on sort of my approach to things. I was in 3 pretty big bands for what they did. You know, I just never treated anybody differently. It didn't matter if my band was really popular or if it was like playing big shows. Like a fan of my band was a friend of mine, just like someone in another band that maybe could pull in a lot of people could be a friend of mine. And unless you're a jerk or just a, you know, a rude person, then, you know, you kind of deal with it there. But anyway, so what I wanted to share today was James Smith had asked me to share a Wildstorm story for you all, and it's a really cool story. So I've been working at Wildstorm for a while. Jim Lee at one point came into our area. Jim has a big, at the time, had a big private office kind of like on one end of the office, which was kind of by the coloring department. So there was this big area they called the pit that had probably 15 desks, if I was going to guess. It was kind of laid out like the bridge of the Enterprise, like the Star Trek ship. I mean, it was intentionally made to look like that. Real dark, though. It was all black and dark, and it was initially set up, I think, for comic artists coming in that wouldn't get a private office. So like when you're an intern, you would come and you would take a little spot there. They weren't cubicles, but you know what I mean? Like you'd have, you know, a few feet of space that you had a cabaret where you could put your stuff in, and a black desk thing that would kind of pull up. It was very, very cool. I have photos of it somewhere. And then eventually I'm going to do a book. I'm going to do several books, actually. I don't like to say it on YouTube because I don't want people to copy me, but since you guys are all Patreons, I'll say it here. But trust me, I've got at least 3 or 4 books in the works that I want to do. I might do the first one as an ebook just because I think it'll be easier for me to get them out. But anyway, so when I first got to Wildstorm, Jim had just retired, quote unquote. He, I think, had just had his 2nd kid. He had done Wildcats, like, he had done Savage Dragon. He was working on Savage Dragon when I got there. So he did, I think, Savage Dragon 14. So I never really got to know Jim when I first got there. He was sort of like the guy that would like walk through the office, go into his private office, and he didn't really communicate much with the interns. The penciling interns a little bit more because I think like he felt a responsibility to sort of at least get them on track and give them a little bit of advice. But he was definitely more distant at that point. And he had been through a lot, like the leaving Marvel, the image boom, you know, having kids and a family and a lot of responsibilities. I think like he was probably just very busy because based on me actually getting to know Jim very well later, that probably would be more indicative of how he was. And also I think like he definitely became more outgoing as time went on. But anyway, so James wanted me to tell. So at one point, like all the artists were moved down to another side of the office as they were doing this office shuffle thing, and it kind of sucked, honestly, in a way, because I had a private office that I shared with J. Scott Campbell, Well, the first office that I had was a very, very cool office. It was called the Green Room. It was the most kick-ass office in the studio, in my personal opinion. Had a killer view of the ocean, the hotel across the street, the swimming pool at the hotel across the street. I mean, it was like eye candy everywhere. It was absolutely gorgeous. The office could hold probably 6 people comfortably. It was J. Scott Campbell, Travis Charest, Troy Hubbs, Tom Ranney, and Alex Garner. So when I moved in, Travis and Troy had already moved to Los Angeles, and there was free space, so I basically took up one of their spaces. So at that point then I was sharing the office with J. Scott Campbell, Garner, and Tom Ranney. So it was just 4 of us in there. Had a beautiful black like leather couch. I mean, these guys were making money. They called it the Green Room because the office was painted green, like a pretty dark green, and then we had a black. We had painted the white kind of stucco-y push tile roof black. They had done it. Really the only Tom Ranney and I probably worked there the most during the day. Campbell third most, and then Garner would only come in on Fridays. He generally would work at home. He would come in on Fridays, turn in some pages, and then really just kind of like the camaraderie of being around the studio. But Jeff and I, J. Scott Campbell, ended up in a private office where it was just Jeff and I, and we did that for probably a year or two, and then Andy Hartnell came in as they were working on Danger Girl. But at some point they moved us all way down to the other side of the office. Sorry, it's like a meandering story, but I'm assuming that if you're a fan of Wildstorm or any of this stuff, it's actually kind of interesting to hear like sort of like some real like nuts and boltsy backstory. So yeah, so they moved us all to this like one side of the office, and it used to be editorial, and so they had us all in there, and it was like 7 artists and kind of like one area, and it was like not what we were accustomed to, but the money strings were getting tighter. They used to have the 2nd and 3rd floor, not the full floor, but you know, like if there was, I don't even know, but anyway, we had an office on the 2nd floor, and we had an office on the 3rd floor. 2nd floor was where all the artists and editorial was, and the 3rd floor was production. So they moved everything downstairs. They were condensing everything, and at some point, Jim just started coming down and working with us, and then the office expanded a little bit. We actually ended up opening up 2 smaller private offices. One, the one that Carlos and I ended up in, used to be Joe Chido and his assistant's office, and then the one to the right of it had always been the editorial editor-in-chief's office, and actually that was where I kind of got hired, was that office. So it was Carl Stianda, myself, and then in the next office was Lee Bermejo and Jim Lee. And we had an absolute blast. But one day we were all working, and we would usually towards 2 o'clock, the conversations would get pretty loose, and we would just have fun. Everyone had been working, and I just said, like, out of the blue one day. Well, there was two experiences. I'll post both pieces. One was they were doing like an anniversary card for maybe the 10th anniversary of Wildstorm, something like that. And Jim, when he gets an idea in his head, it's gonna happen like that second. It's like, we're gonna all draw pieces, we're gonna sell them on eBay, and we're gonna go to Vegas tonight. I mean, it's like crazy stuff like that. He's a wild man. But yeah, so the first time I got shoehorned into actually penciling something on the spot, and you have to understand at that point, I really wasn't drawing at all. I had always been good at art, but I got into comics to ink to make money for my band. So it was just like, that's a job I could do. I think I could learn it fast, and I think I can make pretty good money to put it into my bands, because, you know, the first couple of years you're in a band, even if you're doing well, you're really not making money. You know, you're breaking even, hopefully. So I just, you know, I never really drew comic stuff, and he wanted everyone to do a pencil drawing. It was going to go on these little kind of like 8x5 cards, and so I drew a voodoo piece, but we all had like an hour. It was very, very intimidating. Funny enough, my piece actually turned out very nice. I still to this day would consider myself proud of it, because I wasn't drawing at all, and I would sometimes use the analogy of, it would be like if you grabbed someone off the street and just said, draw Superman, and they could actually draw a pretty good Superman. I mean, that's kind of what that drawing was, is I actually have a lot of natural ability. problem is my affinity for comics sometimes wanes. I'm not a huge superhero fan, although I do love the Wildcats. I can find great things in anything. I love the origin of characters more than kind of the legacy that's sort of been evolved from them, meaning like Wolverine to me is a fantastic character. Cyclops, Supergirl, the idea of these characters is phenomenal. If you were able to have the opportunity to just do what you wanted to do based on what they're about, the core ideas, that to me is very interesting. Having to deal with, oh, well, Supergirl is like this character now, and she looks like this, and she wears this costume, and you really can't do this with her because of this, and this storyline that happened, 2 years ago. It starts to lose all the appeal and all the creative thing. But at the core, I think all superhero characters are actually really interesting. And I would use Travis as a great example of Travis could draw anyone and make it look cool. I think the reason that he could is because he has that same belief system that I do, is if you just eliminate all the superfluous things that have been lumped onto the characters, they're all actually kind of cool. I mean, you can have an unusual friend that has a lot of quirks and is into weird stuff, but they're interesting because they're unique. That's what makes them interesting. So anyway, so I did real well on this first pencil voodoo drawing that I did, and then maybe a year or two went by, and I think I was drawing a little bit more. My pattern for drawing kind of has always gone like this. If I get kicked in the ass pretty hard, I'll draw, and I can usually draw pretty good. And if I stuck to it, I could probably draw very well. Unfortunately, now that I'm a professional, time is always against me. I talk about time a lot. Because time, you gotta have time to do something. Comics is hard. The thing for me is, okay, I always do monthly books. So when you do monthly books, how many artists do you know that can actually even deliver monthly books? Okay, and then try to imagine delivering monthly books and then doing more. That's where I'm at, and that's where I'm stuck at, because I'm just financially not loose enough to be able to have more free time. It'd be like if you went to school for 10 hours a day and you had other goals. I mean, you could probably squeeze out another 6 hours of something, but I also have to remember that tomorrow morning the whole day starts over again, and I need to keep doing it. And as an inker, you don't really control the level of detail in the art, so if a penciler goes crazy on a piece, I'm in for the ride. But so the second time that I was actually forced to draw was sitting around one day shooting the breeze, probably after lunch, and I was like, man, I really wish that I would have penciled first. Circumstance got me into inking. It was just that I needed a job where I could actually make a decent income, and I had met an inker through one of my bands that was making really, really good money inking, and I was like, man, you get paid that much to trace drawings? And about a year later, I was working professionally, so yes, I said something like that, and Jim goes, draw something right now. And I'm like, oh God, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Because when he says that, he is not gonna let it go. Like, you're not getting out of it. So he goes, Travis did this to me one time actually too. I was talking to Travis and I was like, man, I really wish I drew more. And he's like, sit down right now and draw something. So Jim, he goes, you got an hour, like, draw a pin up. And I was like, oh my God, like, are you kidding me? So I started drawing it, and I think the wash thing was kind of getting popular. Jim, I don't know if it was because of Travis or what the evolution was, but people were doing kind of more painterly techniques on stuff. So anyway, my go-to is always Voodoo. She's really fun to draw. I love drawing hair. She's got tattoos and the creepy Damonite arm and stuff like that. And so I was probably like 30 minutes into it. I had it pretty well laid out. I'm very, very fast. When I draw, I'm real fast, which is a good thing and a bad thing. We'll talk about that later in another private Patreon video. But yeah, so about 30 minutes into it, Jim goes like start inking it. And so I'm like inking it, and now I'm really nervous because I'm like, I'm gonna like just completely go off the rails and make some decision in ink, and it's gonna be a disaster. And he was like standing over my desk. Jim is so funny, and he's like do it faster. He's like, get the brush wetter, like throw it down, and I got it probably like 85 to 90% of the way through, and then Jim sat down and started like kind of like tying it all together, and he was putting white on it and sculpting the mouth and stuff like that. So it ended up being more of a collaborative piece. He really probably elevated it to a point beyond what I was capable of doing under those circumstances. Again, it wasn't a pencil drawing. It was like, you know, 30 minutes of penciling and then another 30 minutes of like him standing over me like, whoosh, 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 throw in that hair, do the tattoo. It's like, I'm like pretty like detail oriented, so you know, like working that fast is it pulls you out of your comfort zone. But it's a real good thing. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna end it with this. I'll do like 3 more minutes. So I was gonna do a versus video, and I'll just give you a little teaser of what it is. And it was deadlines versus no deadlines. What's the difference? What are the pros and cons of both? The real big pro of deadlines, as much as it sucks to have to deal with them, is it puts your ass on the fire and it makes you deliver, okay? And without that pressure, most people won't deliver. If you don't have a due date for something, you're gonna sit and you're gonna pick at it and you're gonna change things and you're gonna have like little ideas. Hey, there's a cat right there. Do you see it? Charlotte, Charlotte, Charlotte. My daughter named both of the cats, so we've got Charlotte and Sable. Yeah, if you don't have a deadline or a due date for something, it's probably not going to get done, because it's like going on a trip and not knowing where you're going. You don't have a direction, really. You don't have a destination time where you're going to arrive somewhere. And even if you're working on your own, you should really consider the idea of setting up deadlines for yourself, because at the worst, you'll have something done that won't be at the level of quality that you want. At the best, you'll have something completed that is done. You know, you can go back and you can always refine it, but you'll never finish anything if you don't have, I think, deadlines or a real structure to what the point of something is. So if you're working on personal projects, which I know some people are, or they're toying with the idea of doing it, they've got an idea that they like, that they want to work on, and oh man, my phone's going to cut out. But you know, like you said, if you don't set a deadline for yourself, you probably aren't going to do it. So just, you know, go, in 2 months I want to have like 13 pages drawn, or I want to have 40 pages of script written, and then get on it and get it done. All right, patrons, I love you all. Thank you so much. We had a new one sign up last night. All right, my phone's going to turn off. Enjoy. Hit the like button. It still helps me on YouTube. And I will